The BMW S1000R has a ride-by-wire throttle. Well, that wire must be connected to a warp core, because when you twist this, it feels like you've reached out, grabbed the horizon and pulled it towards you. After 4 years and over 10,000 miles, I still think this thing is phenomenal.
It's the bare-faced biker.
I've done track days on this bike, been to the Alps, been to the north of Scotland. It was raining, so here's another Alp pic. And basically, this is still the best bike I've ever ridden. Well, this and the Gixxer 750, obviously.
The good bits.
The engine out of the RR, tuned for mid-range torque, just always seems to have more power on tap. It revs to oblivion, it has go from no revs to the red line. It eggs you on, and some people might struggle a bit to rein themselves in, but I find self-preservation kicks in. Being a naked bike also helps to keep it sensible. The ride-by-wire is silky smooth if you use 95 octane. I find 98 octane makes it a bit snatchy and doesn't really have any noticeable power or economy improvement. Road mode gives you full power but is very forgiving. You can even be quite ham-fisted and get away with it. Dynamic sharpens things up really nicely and the throttle response is more immediate. Rain mode cuts power to 100 horsepower and dulls the throttle. I don't like it, I've never felt the need for it. Road mode is certain enough even in the wet to be predictable, and I prefer always having the full power on tap if I want it, even in the wet. So the gearbox is pretty sporty, short lever throw. It's got a good quick shifter, up only on the Gen 1. Later Gen 2s had down with auto blipper. I've never had a false neutral in 10,000 miles, not once. You can pretty much do everything in 5th gear anyway if you're being lazy and if you want to. It could maybe use a higher 6th gear for cruising, or maybe a 7th, 8th and 9th gear, and some people change the rear sprocket.
So you can ride this bike pretty much in 5th gear. If I just put it in 5th gear, the way that this is tuned for mid-range torque, if I'm looking at what I'm doing and what the traffic's doing, 25 mile an hour 5th gear, no chugging, absolutely spot on. Still plenty of pickup without any chugging, absolutely amazing. You could literally just leave it in 5th gear if you want to. If you want to be absolutely lazy. I mean, I'd flick it down if I was in traffic on an A road going for a fast overtake, just so that all the power was there, but the versatility of this engine is amazing. Still in 5th, no problem, no bother. Incredible.
The handling and the suspension are superb. The feel from the front is amazing, which means I actually really enjoy riding it in the wet. Like most sports bikes, it's got a rubbish turning circle, but on the move it tips in and turns on a penny, and it just means you have to shift your upper body weight a bit and hang off to get round corners. But you feel at one with it, and frankly it all makes you feel like Rossi. It's a firm but comfortable ride, and what I really like is that it's got manual preload for fine tuning, both front and rear, even though it's got the electronic damping adjustment. In my view, it's the perfect combination and better than full electronics. Your preload's infinitely variable, so you can get it just right. This 2015 Gen 1 bike has got soft, medium and hard damping modes. I find soft's a bit wallowy, road's perfect for general road riding, and hard I would only really use on track. The riding position is sporty but all day comfy. The way you can tuck your knees into the tank and take your weight off your wrists and move around on the seat means long stints in the saddle are really not a problem. The pegs are quite high but they're not too bad. I've got the standard seat on this bike, which I've never found to be an issue. The brakes on this bike are incredible. They have a very sharp initial bite, good for 1 or 2 finger feathering, but if you grab a 4 finger firm hold from a high speed, the stopping power is phenomenal. but still with loads of feel. It pulls you up in a stupidly short distance.
So the cruise control on the BMs is amazing. I don't know if you can see it just under my sat-nav mount there, but literally I flick it on with my front finger, there we go, it's on. It's that easy. It works in any gear, any speed. It does flick off if you change speed, it flicks off if you roll off the throttle like that, but it's that easy to turn it back on. Absolute breeze, genius. So just to demonstrate, I could flick it up a mile an hour just by flicking it like that. Flick it down. If I use either brake, it will switch off, and I can turn the whole thing on and off with this lever here, but I just leave it on all the time so it's there just to flick on and off under my finger. Absolutely brilliant.
My service costs on this bike have been very reasonable. I've had great service from the local BMW dealer. It's actually been marginally cheaper to service than a street triple in the years I've had it. Touch wood, I've had no problems at all in 10,000 miles and in 4 years.
The not so good bits.
Well, what is there to say? I really am nitpicking to find things to say here, but there are a few points of mention. The first one is obviously you couldn't do a review of this bike without mentioning the vibes. Not really because it's an issue, I'm just mentioning it for completeness and because that's what people always ask about. Did it get better from nearly new with miles? A little bit, but I've got standard bar ends on this bike and I've never found it to be any issue whatsoever. You really just need to try it and it's a personal view as to whether it's going to bother you. So there are no real luggage options on this bike, not even a proper top box rack, which admittedly probably most people don't want, but it is quite annoying as it would otherwise be a more rounded do-it-all bike. You can get soft side panniers, but you're really in sports bike territory here in terms of the sort of options available. Can you tour on it? Of course you can. A roll bag goes nicely on the back. I went to the Alps for a fortnight and did the Grossglockner on it. Was it as comfy as a GS or an XR behind a bigger screen and upright on the motorway bits? Well, obviously not. But it will do it and it will be a lot of fun when you get there. The heated grips don't particularly get that hot. You could possibly improve winter riding with some handguards, depends if you like the look, but come on, it's a sports bike with stock heated grips. Not really a bad point, but it is a naked bike, which is what it is. It comes as stock with a tiny screen on, which is actually not too bad because your helmet's in clean air. I've toured with a little Wunderlich touring screen, which took air pressure off my chest but left me pretty deaf from turbulence. And I've finally settled on this Wunderlich marathon screen, which I've found best for avoiding deafness and wind blast, and I don't think it looks too bad. It gives it more of that RR look, but you've obviously still got the R riding position, so it's the best compromise for me. Being a naked bike, I find I get cold after an hour or two in lower temperatures on this bike, and I've used heated gear and a vest has worked well connected to the battery. A bit of a downside for touring of course, but as I say, it's a naked bike, it is what it is. The cable clutch is non-reach adjustable, which I've not really found to be a problem. It's really easy to adjust the biting point. A lot of people change the levers to the BM HP levers, but they're quite pricey. Being a cable clutch, it's also quite heavy, although again, I don't really find it a problem. It's only a bit taxing in stop-start traffic if you're stuck in a jam where you can't filter or something like that. Oddly, on the brake lever side, you can adjust the reach, but there you go. The cam chain is a bit noisy on cold starts, although it quietens down when it fills with oil. Some people fit a manual tensioner. I believe it's improved on later models, but touch wood, it hasn't caused me any issues. Some people report leaky water pumps across the S1000 range and have had multiple replacements. Also, some reports of worn camshafts, but again, touch wood on both these, I've not had any problems. And conversely, there are some reports on the forums of very high mileage bikes with no major issues. So like any bike, I guess you can be lucky or not. So after 4 years and 10,000 miles, that's pretty much my conclusion. Some say it lacks the character of the likes of Ducati or Tuono, but it's a beast and it never fails to put a smile on my face. I don't really ride it any faster than my mates on XRs and GSs, they're just better riders than me anyway. But riding it is just so engaging. I feel like Rossi every time I ride it, and yet that said, it's easy to ride, it's easy to live with, and it doesn't cost the earth. It's even got cruise control and heated grips, for God's sake. What's not to like? And as a final note, what I can tell you is my wife actually says she'll never let me sell this bike because I always come back with such a big smile on my face. What better endorsement could you want?